What I see the future is a mix between VR, AR, XR, and...
On this episode of the RCN podcast, the CEO and founder of Allied BIM, Brian Nickel.
And he's in my ears on this headset, digitally lay out and mark up the facility in VR. What does the future generation want?
Those are the unicorns. Yep. Those are the once in a random one shot, good job.
I always tell my students, go to conferences, network. Your network's everything. I saw that as an opportunity through education to inform me in my own business. We leveraged our gains off of that.
As-builts don't really exist, right?
It's a very challenging, rewarding, scary adventure.
The companies need to care and the individuals.
But I think future-wise, that's probably where we're headed. We're headed more towards...
Welcome to the studio, Brian. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me today, Matt.
I am excited to dig in and talk. I've known you for several years now, and it's been fun watching your journey grow from a couple different companies to what you're doing now. So take us back to your story a little bit.
Yeah. So back in early 2002, I was in high school at Santiago High School in Southern California. And before I entered high school, I used to be a huge gamer. So I played a bunch of video games. And my parents basically told me, they're like, you can't play video games your whole life. You've got to do something with your interest in that and something that you can provide for a family and actually, accelerate and succeed in your career. So we went and talked to the school counselor, and the school counselor was like, well, we have this really nice design drafting program that basically goes through, mechanical parts, architecture, CAD, all those related fields. And long story short, I ended up in that program. Well, what I found out was that school specifically at that time was really well connected with the South Coast Revit user group meeting, which is SCRUG. And essentially what I learned is we were one of the first high schools in the US to actually bring Revit on at the beginning on Revit 6.0 at the time when I took it in 2004. And essentially what I learned through that program was 3D animation, manufacturing of part production, CAD for drawing buildings, CAD for drawing solid parts, Inventor, things like that. Basically learning a Swiss Army knife of CAD operations.
Yep.
And when I graduated high school, I wasn't really focused on college at that time. My parents pushed me. They're like, you need to go to college. You need to figure this out. But quite frankly, I was young and dumb at 18, didn't really know what I wanted to do. And so I started at Cal Poly Pomona in their industrial manufacturing side. And I really didn't like it, industrial engineering and manufacturing. And the reason I didn't like it is I really loved the art of architecture. But in the state of California at the time, architecture and still today is very impacted. Minimum requirement, it's like 4.0 GPA. I had a 3.3. I was a B average student, standard all-around average student. So I moved away. I went up to community college and took a college success class at Cuesta College. And it really got me in. They had us put together this PowerPoint of like, where do you see yourself by 2020? Where do you see yourself by 2030? And that really had the light bulb go off. It's like, what am I doing? I need to get this done. So I moved back down to Southern California and I went to Norco Community College. And we always had a saying that community college sucked. And quite frankly, from my experience, I had a blast in it. You have all sorts of different people there. It was just a really good experience. But what I did is I entered their architecture and engineering program there and finished my GEs and did all that. Met my wife, and my wife was a mechanical engineering student at the time at Cal Poly. We both failed out actually at Cal Poly together. And the reason we failed out is we were young and learning and we just didn't know what we wanted to do with our lives. So we both graduated with high honors or good grades in the community college program. And they're like, well, everything's impacted here. Your only option is to be an environmental scientist. And I was like, whoa, I don't want to be an environmental scientist. So I asked my wife, we were sitting down one day and I'm like, where can we go? What can we do? Let's go do something fun. We grew up here. Where can we go? And she goes, I got a great idea. Let's go to Bozeman, Montana. And I was like, no way. Like the snow's so bad. Like, no way. Like, because I was in a bubble. I was like, the weather's so nice. We can do all this. And long story short, we moved to Bozeman, Montana. I got into school for architecture at Montana State University. She got in for accountancy. We grew there. I got my master's in 2017 there. And I had worked for a small mom and pop mechanical and plumbing and heating company there. And what was nice is I kind of learned and worked. I worked full-time during school, was doing 40 hours a week, really like 80 hours a week with full-time school, and learned to become a workaholic, basically.
Yeah.
And so starting with the plumbing and mechanical shop, I met my business partner today, who was my boss at the time, Bob Harvey, president of Allied. And what we did is he basically said from a subcontractor's perspective what his problems were with receiving architectural drawings and engineered drawings and building houses up in the Yellowstone Club or commercial buildings, like what sort of things he experienced that he fought. Mm-hmm. And worked there for about 7 years, and essentially said, we need to build a software to do this for us. And Bob agreed with me. Like, we had evaluated solutions in 2015. And in 2018, we started up Allied BIM, which I'm now the CEO of. And it all was stemmed out of this experience of working for a mechanical and plumbing trade contractor. And we took a lot of companies today, standard, they're building tools and they're building parts and pieces for their solo operations. And there aren't enough people in the industry building tools that are ubiquitous to all companies, right? Because everybody does things. Trades are very trade related. It's an art.
Yeah.
So started that, and we ended up raising our seed round of about $2.5 million back in January of last year. And that some of our partners are Arco Murray, national general contractor in the U.S., top 3 ENR 100. And then we've got a private family company that's invested in us on the East Coast, former Autodesk employee, great company. They're out there. They're called Alpha Infinity. And then the third company or partner was CNR Electric out of Shepherd, Michigan. They're an electrical contractor. And that's kind of where we're at today.
That's
kind
awesome.
of what got me. I know that was long and elaborated, but
no, that's great. Yeah. So that's kind of a fun time to be working at working within trades and when you move to Montana and then you get that spark of like, how can we fix a problem?
Well, I finally got to see what the problem was on a job site.
Yeah.
Like in design school, we're learning to design buildings, but we're not really learning about the brains within the buildings. We do. We have a book called MEEB that every architect has in their environmental systems class. But, we don't really, we generalize the concepts of the heating and we generalize the concepts of that. And at the trade level, you're dealing with the practical parts. So think of it as theoretical versus practical, right? So what I was very fortunate to experience was this theoretical design side, which is kind of like the right side of your brain, and then the practical side, which is more of the technology, which is the left side of your brain, right? And so bringing those two things together really helped me as an individual be able to start to make a stab at developing software that could be valuable for theoretical and practical applications.
Would you tell us a little bit about some of the other technologies that you guys were using and maybe,
Absolutely.
some of your vision and the application of those integrating with what you're doing?
Yeah. So in 2015, we were looking at design software that allowed us to prefab from a Revit model to just a standard tape measure and a standard general way of doing things. So we looked at Siskiyou, we looked at Stratus, we looked at Evolve, we looked at like several other tools, but they just didn't fit what our vision was. And in 2016, we bought a linear tiger stop machine, which is basically a linear backstop. So it's a computerized way of setting up a backstop on a saw. And what I realized there was that the connectivity from our Revit model to the machine wasn't very accurate. And in order to have an accurate Revit model, we had to incorporate laser scanning and reality capture at our job sites to better model what was going to be fabricated prior to sending it to the site. And so the tools we used was a Leica RTC 360, and then we used a Icon 80, and then we also used a BLK 360. And so I know everybody's kind of different, so you have different sectors, but we found really good success in using Leica because we were able to go out, capture the reality, get within a 1/16 of an inch, which is our tape measure in the Revit model, then connect it to a linear positioning system that allowed us to get accurate parts to be able to manufacture from a building model. And so those tools kind of led us into some other things where we started a sheet metal shop. And in 2015, Autodesk released what was called ITM parts, which are basically fabrication parts. Traditionally, engineers draw with system families. They don't get to the level of detail with fabricatable components and pieces, fabrication parts. So I was very fortunate and lucky that those came out at the time, because had they not, it would have been a much heavier lift. We would have had to build a bunch of custom families. It would have been very difficult. So what we did is we built an ITM library with all of our standard sets and pieces for plumbing and mechanical, and basically just started drawing and modeling to our laser scans. So we would go out and scan level 1 of a building while the framing was up, and then the site GC's like, where's the plumber? The framing's up. Like, where are you guys? And we're like, we've got it fabricated. We'll install it. So we did a building downtown in Bozeman on Black and Olive in that exact instance, where the GC was getting frustrated because he's like, I expect it's going to take about 3 months for you to plumb this. Where are you guys? We prefabbed it in our shop in 1 week for a whole level of the building, installed it in 2 days.
Wow.
And he goes, okay, I believe you guys now. Let's keep going. And that was a huge success for us.
Yeah.
Taking it from months down to days.
Yeah. That's a very unique way to see, these technologies kind of advance, as opposed to just trying to measure something, but how is it really affecting how fast we can build?
Exactly.
I don't think a lot of people are seeing the integration of scanning and fabrication. I feel like there's a lot of even fabrication shops that are just barely getting into using that data.
Yep.
And we all know as-builts don't really exist, right?
Right.
There is no accurate documentation. How do you see the advancement of the measurement, the digital twin process, the fabrication, the robotics? Where do you see some of that going, and maybe some other areas as well? So
not to hop on the AI train here, but to hop on the AI train here a little bit. When I first heard of AI just a couple of months, well, I guess it was probably a year ago at this point. November was really when Autodesk announced Autodesk AI, right? And I'm like, oh, here we go again, another name, right? ChatGPT, with its evolution of what it's been able to do in order to get our parts and pieces and our information out, has really blown my mind.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's blown my mind. I can run a mathematical calculation through it and train the monkey of the AI bot to become basically an astronaut or something higher than that. And it'll give me more and more accurate results as I'm feeding it more and more information. And that's one of the really powerful things. So where I see it happening in building construction is I see automated building design using AI, and I see automated building fabrication using AI. And so there's two people right now that are doing it, and a few others that are following suit. One being Augmenta. Augmenta is a tool for electrical contractors, but in general, it's going to be mechanical and plumbing. And I have a couple of good friends that work there, and I classify them as solving the automation for building design, because as you know, it's an egregious process for somebody to go out and lay out systems click by click in a building, where you can tell the computer, hey, run OCR on this plan set, generate a fire suppression layout for me, and then convert that into an automated building fabrication drawing. And now I'm going to manufacture it on my machines, and I'm going to get the job done in 2 days instead of 60 days or 120 days, right? So that's where I see it going in construction in that regard. There's a whole nother plethora of opportunity, encompassing point cloud data into AI, I think. I haven't seen that happen yet.
Yeah.
I think that there's some opportunity to start to feed some more of that in to inform AI to get the results that we need for design and fabrication. We're still a little early, of course.
Yep.
But
yeah, we are, but it is an exciting time to see the application of AI in certain areas. And then imagine what could it do within whatever industry or technology you focus on.
Exactly.
Where you're saying with like point clouds, I think there are some software companies that are working on like, how can we take this data and better pull, analytics from it, or maybe segment different parts. But it's still so basic and very early to where you can imagine it to be. I'm like, man, I want to be able to open a software and use the power of ChatGPT with the data from reality capture and the images. And you can imagine being able to just ask your software a question, and the AI can then go extract that from the information.
Exactly.
From the images, from the point clouds. How many light switches are in this building?
100%.
How many linear feet of, carpet, whatever it is.
Give me my bill of materials.
Yeah.
Give me my fabrication and CNC files. Give me what I need. Give it to me.
Yeah.
That's really where we're at.
Major opportunity, which that actually makes me want to maybe fall into that conversation about opportunity, startups, how you take an idea to actually starting to build and execute, and I think that'd be a fun conversation because of this. What we're talking about now, our industry is so ripe for opportunity.
Oh yeah.
For there are so many people out there competing in markets that are completely saturated.
Yep.
This space is very open. I mean, it's one of the reasons I try to just talk about reality capture so much, is that laser scanning is not new. It's been around for a long time. It's an amazing technology. It's ready to use today, and our market is still like barely using it.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And let alone what else could be created.
Yeah, no, totally, totally. So I teach at Montana State University. I teach Revit. I've been using Revit since 2004. And so I'm just now hitting the 20-year mark of using Revit. And I tell my students every semester, I teach at Gallatin College and Montana State. So at Montana State, it's the Construction Engineering Technology program. That was more recent in the last 2 years. 6 years ago, I started in the design drafting program there. On average, I ask my students every day at the beginning of the first semester in my class, how many students are familiar with the trades? How many people have family that work in the trades? How many people are looking to go into the trades? The answer that I get from my design drafting students is nearly zero. I usually have one or two students that are like, I might want to be an electrical contractor. I might want to be a plumbing contractor. I might want to be a mechanical contractor. They're not interested in that. They want to do design, and they want to impact the process, but they don't want to do the process of physically building it.
Yeah.
Right. And so I saw that as an opportunity through education to inform me in my own business of what does the future generation want? Right? What do they want? We're dealing with the TikTok, the Snapchat, the Threads, generation where we've got a 10-second, attention span. Maybe I'd argue it's probably 3 seconds now.
3. That's more accurate.
Yeah. And what's interesting is we have a trade shortage in our industry, and I'm not saying that to scare anybody at all.
No.
That's opportunity.
Yeah.
When you have a shortage in something, there's an opportunity.
Which is all of our industry, all of the built environment, right?
Yep.
All construction, all trades, surveying, all of it is desperate for people. And nobody's getting inspired to go become that person.
Right. And so when I get that feedback from them, what I do is I take them on a journey over the semester. And I do this in the evening. I run my business full-time during the day and I teach in the evening. And so this night classes generally, and what they generally see by the end of the semester is that opportunity. I try to teach them that opportunity. So back to your point on the entrepreneurial side is I explain to them from my experience what I've done as just an example, but I also show them other examples of other entrepreneurs in the space, and I challenge them to go after it, right? Yeah. And from our experience, or from my experience with my business partner, Bob, and I, is we lived the problem. So we actually understood the problem very well because we experienced the problem.
Yep.
And we leveraged, our gains to inform building a solution off of that.
Yeah.
And, that has led us through these networking opportunities. I always tell my students, I'm like, go to conferences, network. Your network's everything.
Yep.
I don't know everything. You guys don't know everything. We all don't know everything. But with our network, we probably know a lot, right?
Yes.
We at least know more, right? So I challenge them to go and network with people, connect. I have them all create a LinkedIn account.
Please.
And this is a Revit class. And I go, guys, I know you're looking at me right now, why are you having me set up a LinkedIn account? LinkedIn is everything right now in this industry.
Yep.
And so all of them set up a LinkedIn account generally. I don't force them to. I say, look, I understand social media, but it would be very helpful if you do. And they connect with me, and then I refer them and kind of reference. But what I'm seeing is the opportunity beyond what we've seen is there's all these microcosms of other areas of opportunity. And what I do is I'm focused on our problem, which is automated building fabrication.
Yep.
And I challenge them to, think about and evaluate it through experience. And I tell them it's not going to be immediate. You've got to get into the industry first, learn the industry, and then apply that to the industry.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. Because it's almost impossible, not impossible, but almost impossible for someone to step into entrepreneurship, create a product, having never worked in the industry, and actually build something successful.
Exactly.
And implement. Those are the unicorns.
Yep.
Those are the once in a random one shot, good job.
Yep.
The best way to create a business is to live the problem, see the solution that isn't out there yet. And then I would even say that I would recommend most people try to implement that solution within a company.
Exactly.
Because entrepreneurship is still very difficult.
Exactly.
A lot of people see it as the easy way to success, just, start my company. I'm going to work less. I'm going to retire early. It's like, okay, there's a lot that goes into it. And not everybody's meant to run a business, right?
Correct. Totally.
And it's hard giving that advice when you are a business owner, but it's so true. And if you do the research, you do the learning, you have to know that you're going to go all in it. You have to really believe in it. Yep. It's going to be a lot of hard work. Yep. And there's also nothing wrong with not being the guy who built the business. If you can be in a large construction firm and you can be a department lead that carries the torch of innovation, you bring solutions. There's nothing wrong with being that guy either.
Exactly.
But getting some experience, working at some companies, understanding technologies and problems will better align you to create something, even if your goal is to start a business.
Yeah, no, totally. I agree with everything you're saying there. When I moved here to Boise, Idaho, where I'm at now, I started working for a general contractor locally. And one of the biggest things I learned was the perspective from a general contractor versus the perspective from a subcontractor. And the perspective of the subcontractor is they perform bids to ultimately get awarded work through the general contractor to build buildings. That process in and of itself is actually a very wasteful process. And what happens is the general contractor will hire a plumbing, mechanical, and electrical, structural concrete, steel. They'll hire they'll bid out to 3 subcontractors of each.
Yeah.
they'll propagate an Excel spreadsheet with all the data, and they'll always go with the lowest price. And so one of the difficulties with that is you could be letting someone down that's $5,000 more, but has machine automation in their shop that could accelerate your schedule to get the job done faster, right? So the reason I bring that up is being able to look at the industry from a design perspective, an engineering perspective, a subcontractor perspective, a general contractor perspective. It's a lot of time and energy to go to those different areas, but the beauty is you're becoming multifaceted in your understanding of the industry.
Yep.
Right? So for me, my background going into architecture, I wanted to understand the process at all those levels by experiencing it.
Yeah.
Right? And that experience has led to a different trajectory, which is now solving, building software. And you brought up a good point. Not everybody that experiences that problem or starts will be successful. It can be a unicorn, right?
Yep.
And we reached a point in 2020 during the pandemic. It was actually more like 21, end of 21. We started to go on a fundraising pursuit. So as an entrepreneur, if you don't have capital or you're running out of capital, you go on a fundraise. And that is a journey in of itself. I did about 150 pitches to investors, and we got very lucky with the three, very, very blessed with the three investors that we got. And that's 3 out of 150 presentations.
Yeah.
Right? And so never give up is
really
the point.
strong odds.
Never give up. And, formulating your business case, coming up with, market validation, being able to show them that you have an idea and a solution to that idea and that it's working.
Yeah.
Allows for the next raise. We're on our next pursuit right now. And what the stages are is basically we go through pre-seed, which is founders' money, founders' investment. We go through seed, which is where we get external partners like Arco Murray, Alpha Infinity, and a third, which is CNR Electric, where they invested that amount, and that gave us some more runway. Now we go into the next round where your ARR has to be a certain amount. You have to have the market validation, basically the market adoption.
Yeah.
And then you can raise even more money for a Series A, and that's the venture route. And it's a very challenging, rewarding, scary adventure, but exciting as well, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
And so, that's my suggestion if you're starting a business and you don't have capital is go through getting the solution vetted and built out, find an investment partner, present and pitch your ideas. Don't be afraid to share your ideas. Be careful in the ideas that you share.
Sure.
Having an IP strategy is critical. The intellectual property side is very valuable.
Yeah.
So that's my advice on the startup side, really.
That's awesome.
Nutshell. Yeah.
What about some thoughts around like the process of building, like your,
Sure.
building your team and how important other people are, or when you look at hiring and growing from that early stage, are you looking to bring in skill sets you don't have? Are you looking to what's some of your thoughts on that process?
So we started in 2014 or 15. I had a colleague, Tyler and myself. Tyler was in school, Tyler Graff, and I went to architecture school together. And we're like, you know what? I think we can learn to program. That was a mistake. We were in school for architecture. We weren't in school for programming. And we realized real quickly we could code. We could code macros. Like we just could not code a professional suite of software, right? And so what I did is I pitched to Bob Harvey at Harvey's Plumbing and Heating is I said, we really need to hire a professional software developer. And he's like, okay, go do it. And I'm like, uh-oh, where do I go? What do I do? So we started with Upwork. Upwork is a freelancer software. We hired a freelancer. A lot of startup companies start there.
Yeah.
They really do.
Yeah.
And I started with a team out of Brazil, and they worked for us for about 2 years, and we kind of outgrew them, actually. We got it to a point where their skills weren't quite to the aptitude that we wanted it to be. And it was very hyper complex in their layout, which kind of, they did a great job to get us to where we needed to go. And then we could take that proof of concept, and we went to India. We tried 3 different companies in India, and we had a bad experience with the 3 that we picked. We just didn't get lucky finding the right one.
Yeah.
So we went back to Upwork, and we actually found a developer in Cairo, Egypt. And so the developer there really got and understood the problem that we were trying to solve, and he could develop solutions around the problem we were solving. In 2019, they announced at Autodesk University, sometime around 18 or 19, the Forge platform. And I was like General Akbar from Star Wars, like, it's a trap, like, but typical pessimism of like new technology coming out. But I started to listen to what they were throwing down and listen to what they were putting down. And I'm like, interesting. So they're going to go with a web app developed solution, which clearly explains that they understand the bottlenecks of the software tools that are standalone. And we could use multiple tools outside of the tool set of Revit and what you can program on the .NET framework with C# to actually using web-based applications to bounce things through each other. And so I asked my developer, Maudi in Egypt, I said, can you start to explore the Forge application? He's like, I've been absolutely interested in that, and we've started developing on it, and we can apply this. So we started kind of frameworking out our products. And Maudi's team, he was growing an agency with his group, and he was dealing with some growth and issues. So we tried another company in Argentina. Unfortunately, that backfired on us. Autodesk has a certified developer network. And one of the people on that list wasn't quite certified, actually. And so it wasn't quite meeting our needs. So what we did is we went back to him and said, grow and scale your company, get it to the point where you can sustain this. And he did. And now the bulk of our software is developed there. We're at the next threshold where we're starting to onshore development. So we're starting to bring developers in-house. We have an office here in Boise, and we're mostly remote. We have employees kind of across the U.S., but the reality is that we want the team. It's freelance, and they do a great job. But we want to, as part of our Series A, as we go in, we want to onshore development and really build out the development team. And so the biggest thing is understanding your strengths, understanding your weaknesses early, because you can spend a lot of money, mental equity, and all sorts of stuff doing the wrong thing. And don't be afraid to do the wrong things, because you're going to make wrong decisions, but learn from those decisions and always sharpen your pencil and just advance. So
that's great. I'm glad you shared some of that, because I think all the industries have certain areas that are typically outsourced overseas. And that's actually a big topic, right? Where people question, like, should we build in US? Should we outsource overseas? We go to 4 different companies and it didn't work. It was failed. And like, we keep trying that. And then there's also industries or project types that, they don't want data to leave the States. And so there's sometimes a need for US, building your own team. And, but it's a topic that doesn't get talked about, I think, enough. I believe outsourcing and utilizing overseas resources for companies building here is a very valuable process, but I think most people get it wrong by kind of just throwing data over the fence and hoping whoever caught it, the one company they gave it to is going to deliver a quality product. And if it didn't work well the first time, then they shut down the whole idea. And that's why outsourcing has had a bad rep in our industry.
Absolutely.
Is that, we all get 100 messages per day on LinkedIn from so many different companies. You have to be willing to take the time
and the risk.
Time and the risk to find the right company, develop processes. You almost have to treat them like an employee.
Exactly.
Not just, hand data, expect beautiful results.
Exactly. That's 100% correct. And, kind of fast forwarding to where we're at today. It was a journey. The Brazilian development team that we started with, they moved to Australia. And so it was even more difficult time schedule wise. But what from the lessons learned as we kind of went from Brazil to Australia to India to Egypt to Argentina back to Egypt, we actually traveled out and did a developer conference last year in September to Cairo. And it was incredible because we were in person and we could visually sit across the table like we are right now and visually see that they understood our problems, right?
Yep.
And they speak Egyptian Arabic and we speak English. And so that sometimes there's some translations that have to happen. The English for our developer over the course of the last 5 years that we've been working with him, he's almost like can fluently speak English now.
Yeah.
So building that relationship and getting that to that point. Where we're at today is we have 3 products that we've built. We started building a C# application for Revit, which are tools to automate spooling designs. Subcontractors spend egregious amounts of time building out drawings that take anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes to design and detail out. And so our tools can do those in about 7 seconds, basically, per assembly. And then we move that into the cloud-based side with the Autodesk Construction Cloud. And the reason we partnered with Autodesk specifically is 95% of the industry is 90% of the industry to 95% of the industry is using Revit or some sort of building design software with ACC, especially during the pandemic. The pandemic accelerated adoption of ACC for remote workers.
Yeah.
So one of our apps is there. That's what we're putting our emphasis on right now. And what the application does is basically allows us to publish a design model for fabrication. And it allows us to automatically spool, automatically sheet, and automatically send that cut data to machines in a fabrication shop. And so one of the big things with subcontractors is understanding how much time it's going to take to complete their job and to complete their task. And by connecting the machines to the model, we can get real metrics and analytics of how much time it takes by storing that. It's almost like Dodge Analytics for machine shops. And so that's really where we're at. We started with Tiger Stop and Razor Gauge. We're predominantly working with Razor Gauge right now. And then we also have Crippa, which is a CNC tube bending manufacturer. They're based in Italy. And what's great is they were in the automotive and aerospace industry. And so their tolerances are incredibly tight tolerances. They work with, like the big aerospace industries that we all know and see today. 90% of the parts on one of those spacecraft is bent on that tube bender. And so where that fits in with electrical conduit is that task of bending and teaching somebody to pull a tape measure and to mark and to bend the material takes egregious amounts of time to train, and there's no people to train. We're not trying to eliminate jobs. We just don't have people to fill those jobs.
You're getting into my next question.
Good.
Well, you're in the perfect scenario of the complaint of taking everyone's jobs. Technology taking over and AI and robotics and what will people do? And, there's I think it's okay to have that question in general, but most of the applications that these technologies are being applied are in things that there's not enough people to do them, or it's a task that people don't enjoy doing. They just do it because we've had to at this point. So even if it wasn't due to labor shortage, what do you say to that conversation of, technology taking over, these roles?
Didn't we do the same thing in 99? Didn't we do the same thing? We're like, the internet. What's going to happen now? We all literally thought the lights were going to shut off as soon as the ball dropped in 2000, right? Y2K, right? It's not about replacing people or eliminating jobs or getting rid of talent at all. It's about how do you leverage talent to drive those tools. One of my favorite sayings was from my architecture professor in college, Jack Smith. Total arrogant asshole, actually, by the way, but super good, nice guy. And he'd tell you the same thing. He basically said, don't become a tool to the tools. Make the tools your tools. So the way I look at this is AI scary? Absolutely. I mean, it's scary. Like, it's new, it's fresh, like it's smart. It's smart and it's not so smart.
Yes.
Like, you can get bad results.
Yeah.
Last night, my wife and I are considering going on a vacation, and I opened up ChatGPT and I started the speech thing that they just announced like 2 weeks ago. And I'm like, my wife and I would like to go to Belize, and what recommendations do you have for this? And the voice just comes up and it's like, well, you should go here, 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 and here. What else would you like to do on your trip? And I'm like, that's scary.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's cool because you can log it and have it drive a schedule. Is it fun to sit there and find all these places on your own? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But if I can streamline that and take that off my task list and like have it do the hard work there so I can do more with it. Yeah. That's where you're going to leverage it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, just conversation around technology not taking people's jobs and why we are focused on these technologies that enhance, a lot of people, have sayings or quotes, or different people have said, whatever, but it is true that technology won't replace your job, but people using it will.
Oh, totally.
So there is the stance of like, look, you don't have to be afraid of technology, but when certain technologies start getting integrated into a process, into an industry, into a project, and that is starting to become seen as the normal, if you don't get into the technologies, you're going to fall off.
Totally.
Your company's going to fail. You're not going to be relevant. This is also why I say around innovation in general is that the companies need to care and the individuals. Because what happens if I am the one afraid of the technology? If I don't start learning it, when it becomes relevant, my skill set is outdated.
100%. And you know what's funny about that is you talk about frivolous spending or control over capital, right? To me, if I can solve the problem leveraging AI as a tool to accelerate me getting a solution, that's eliminating the manual task of relying on myself to get there faster than the computer can get there.
Yeah.
I'm using the computer to help me get there. So some of the ways that we've been leveraging it is we'll give it a problem and we'll kind of like question the problem that it comes up with until it gets a more refined solution. And even the more refined solution is not always perfect. You still have to have the human component.
Yep.
The human is required.
Yeah.
Right. And I think over time, I mean, there's all sorts of theories and conspiracy about it, but I'm looking at it solely for the AEC industry and how I can leverage it to better my product and my results.
Yeah.
And I've been able to solve some things that I would not otherwise be able to solve without the support of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Using it as a tool.
Yeah. So what, we'll start narrowing toward the end of our conversation, but let's talk a little bit future.
Sure.
So we've talked about past the learnings, why you are where you are. Mm-hmm. I'd love to hear some thoughts on future. Like, where do you see, the future of robotics and all this digital, we're digitizing everything. We're talking about fabrication and automation and installation. And then you've got like XR technologies, for using AR, VR stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Where do you see some of this going?
I love the question. You're like giving me goosebumps because I'm so I'm excited about the future. I'm like,
tell me a story about the future.
Yeah. So the story of the future, my business partner has retired from plumbing. Like he basically, exited his business and he's retired. He had 35 years of experience in his mind that he is now retired. Right. And so you could ask him any question about plumbing or any question about anything, and he would know it specific to that trade, right?
Yeah.
And so what I see the future is a mix between VR, AR, XR, and even AI playing a role in documenting the experiences of people like himself to be able to better inform and use that later. And so one of the things that we talked about at one point was using VR in a collaborative effort. So it's almost like Ready Player One status, right?
Yes.
Where he's over in Bozeman, Montana, he throws on a headset. I'm here in Boise, Idaho. I throw on a headset and I go, Bob, I'm actually out on site at this entertainment golf company that we're building here. And I need you to kind of help me understand that my routes are correct and digitally lay out and mark up the facility in VR. And he's kind of in my ears on this headset. Now, would I look goofy with the headset in the field? Probably. But is it safe in the field? I don't know. Is the technology getting there? Yes, I think so. But essentially, we would design and lay out using that and get a design layout, a theoretical model.
Yeah.
Take that theoretical model, publish it to our cloud environment, have automated building fabrication, run an AI script to place the correct dimensional modeled elements to that, and then hit print, which is really just fabricating and cutting and manufacturing things.
Yeah.
That's kind of future there. I see it getting there. We are closer than we've ever been before.
Yep.
I think there's areas that we've been in our business in architecture, engineering, and construction. We're always busy, right? That's a big complaint. I'm too busy for that.
Yep.
I'm too busy to do this.
Yep.
One of the things is you're almost, yes, we understand you're busy, but you need to allocate time to be able to incorporate some of this stuff. So when you get a lull, spend time learning this stuff. When you're do really well on a project and you have some capital to throw towards learn. But I think future-wise, that's probably where we're headed. We're headed more towards automated building design, not to eliminate the architect or engineer, but to take what the architect and engineer has done and to make it actual so that the subcontractors can build it. Architects don't model studs for a building.
Yeah.
So when that gets handed off to somebody and they have to model it from scratch, that's redundancy, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're getting a lot of redundancy. Even though we drew a wall, there's no studs in the wall. I want to know where those studs are. I want to be able to reality capture the studs and have it update my model, right? I want to be able to take that model that we're putting into the computer and have the computer tell me the most efficient method to fabricate the building in order to offsite. So Allied has a vision of a network of offsite fabrication facilities. It's a very similar vision to Amazon. As lofty and crazy as that sounds, this is our moonshot.
Yep.
Our moonshot is that we're setting up all these subcontractors throughout the U.S. to have offsite enabled fabrication services. Think of GCs using Building Connected to be able to know who performs automated building fabrication and manufacturing.
Yeah.
Right? And we're actually going from prefab into manufactured processes. So building this network so that if I'm a general contractor building the entertainment golf venue here in Boise, down in California to Florida to Dubai or wherever it's going to go, I want to be able to have it automatically generate the building design and automatically part, piece, and manufacture that and have a network that drives that fabrication.
Yeah. And then the fabrication can happen and get delivered. I can
click print and I can know that that's going to show up on Monday and I'm going to erect it. They're doing it with structural steel right now.
Yeah.
They're basically offsite fabricating structural steel. They're getting a better premium on the materials and they're shipping it to the job site with inked instructions. The inked instructions allow, somebody with no knowledge of the project to be able to go through and pinpoint where everything needs to go and stage it on site.
Yeah.
There's no reason we can't do that with everything in the building.
Yeah.
Right? Crazy moonshot
Hey.
vision, but that's
it all starts somewhere.
That's where it starts.
Amazon, right? Started in a garage. I just posted that on LinkedIn, of course.
I saw that.
There's people like already adding comments of, oh, he had help in the beginning. I'm like, look, help or not, 99.9% of people don't even have a vision big enough, let alone then the steps to execute to build something like that.
100%.
Right? Like it's not about startup capital.
And it's not about one person.
No.
That's the biggest thing is like the biggest architecture in general teaches the architect how to be an architect. And the reality is like when you enter this space in AEC, it's not one individual, it's a community.
Yeah.
Right. And so being able to leverage that network to impact what we're actually building is critical. And being able to have the open mindset to bring in technology to explore, you're going to fail. Things will fail.
Yep.
Nobody wants to fail.
Yep.
Nobody wants to fail.
Yep.
But for every failure, there is one step further towards a success to not make that mistake again.
Yep. Of course, it's another one that's said a lot, but anytime I'm talking about innovation, I bring up Thomas Edison and the light bulb, right? Of how many failures it took to reach success.
Right.
1,000 iterations of a light bulb. And then I look at our industry and I'm like, man, people try a laser scanner or drone mapping like one time or twice. And they're like, oh, my results are bad. I give up.
Yep.
It's like, you have to, no matter what you're going to do, if it's around new technologies and innovative processes and something that's not just super simple or everybody does it already, you're going to go through struggles with it and challenges, and it takes time and attention and investment. And like you're saying a minute ago, everyone complains that they're too busy for it. The only way to be innovative is to make time.
Totally.
You either make your own time or you dedicate some of your team's resources, or if you're big enough and you can afford it, you start an innovation department, which is why you see that happening even more and more today than ever before. Within construction firms, there are innovation leaders and innovation departments. And they're like, there's so many tools out there, so many workflows, so many problems, so many startups. It takes a full-time job just to learn about what's out there.
Totally.
Let alone like test it and trial it and vet it and integrate it. And
totally.
That's
why I enjoy teaching. I mean, teaching is my innovation lab. And I'm doing it creatively with the students and the future generation. And what I love about it is it's a fresh set of eyes that aren't biased by being in the industry.
Yeah.
Right. And so they come in and they go, Brian, that's a stupid idea. Or they'll be like, Brian, I never thought of it that way. And it's like being able to take that constructive criticism and to adapt to what you're experiencing is so huge.
Yeah.
And I just really, I'm really excited about where the technology is going. I'm very optimistic. That's another thing I have to say is culture. Culture's huge.
Yeah.
Like, if we can be optimistic and not pessimistic, we had a guy that worked at a shop that we worked with that was very pessimistic, and it just brings the whole culture down.
Yeah.
And so you can't control that. There's realists and there's optimists. I'm very much an optimist. My business partner is a realist. It's kind of yin and yang because when I'm going off into outer space moonshot, he's like, no, Brian, we can't do that today. We need to do this. And I'm like, okay, I agree, but we're going to get there someday. Yeah. Like, even though we can't do it today, we're going to get there.
Yep. You cannot build something massive and successful if you don't think it's possible.
100%.
And that's, I think, where too many people stop is people don't believe in what they can do. They don't believe in themselves. They don't believe that they could have this idea that could grow. It all starts with believing it. So even if it sounds ridiculous, thinking I could build a product, I could build a platform, I could build a something, that is massive. If you don't have a dream like that, then
it'll never happen.
When difficulties come up in business, you will have no reason to keep going either.
Absolutely.
That's the part when it comes back to entrepreneurship, passionate people that want to build something massive is like, if you don't give yourself a big enough dream and big enough goal and your why to why you want to do it isn't big enough, you'll never make it past year one.
I like to follow the stair step analogy where it's like we're climbing these stairs. Alice Long from Brick and Mortar, actually, she's incredible. We were down at Anaheim for a built convention, and she put this diagram up on the screen. And she said, if you're a CEO and you're not focused on sales, you need to get out. Like CEOs have to be focused on sales. And oh, by the way, this is the trajectory that you're on as a startup. And there's charts out there, like if you go on Google and you look up the day in the life of a CEO, there's a chart where it's like up, down, and it's like this roller coaster, right? She showed it pragmatically through like results of data where it's like, you're going to go through the phase of market adoption and then you're going to enter this like curve that kind of goes like this, hopefully it goes like this, like it dives and then it kind of grows up. And we call that the Valley of Sorrow. So if you can survive the Valley of Sorrow, then you can get through it. I remember the first day that I started working in this entrepreneurial role for my startup, I felt like there was this heavy vest on me. Like I was like, what am I going to do? This is scary. Like my whole livelihood depends on the success of this. And what I did is I saw the quote in your office that Joe Pomeranke from Arco Murray shared with me. It's called The Man in the Arena, and everybody should look it up. And he shared that with me, and it just immediately that vest went away. I'm like, you know what? I've got this. We're going to get this done. We've got this. We're going to do this.
Yeah.
So
that is one of the reasons I love podcasts. Yeah. I love interviewing people. I love sharing these conversations. And encouraging people to not just do it within industry, but like read books, read audiobooks, go follow other passionate people, because there's something to be said for inspiration and motivation, even as fluffy and simple as that sounds, right? Like when you constantly surround yourself with those things, that keeps you going. That excites you. It reminds you that you're not the only one who's done something difficult before, that this is not new, that you should expect it, that failure's okay. Like when you put those messages in your head, it makes it a lot easier to build, to show up day after day after day, to go through difficulties. Like So if you're not already doing that, you need to.
No, absolutely. I mean that,
and not by you. I don't mean you. I mean everybody. Yeah, us, everyone.
No, and like that's the thing I was gonna say is like, don't be afraid to connect with people on LinkedIn. Like even if you haven't met them before, if you've seen them on a podcast or you've seen them on a, at a conference. I remember the first time I met you. Actually, I'd listened to a bunch of your podcasts, and I go, oh my God. Matt's in Boise, Idaho. Like my parents had moved up here after we moved to Montana. And I was like, that's so cool. He's in Boise. I didn't expect that. And I ran up to you in Vegas. Like I want to say it was almost 9 years ago. It was probably 2015, 2016. And I go, are you Matt Bird? Like, and you're like, yeah. And it was just so cool because our community is mostly filled with very approachable people.
Yeah.
And I can't stress that enough. Is just not. My first conference, I was afraid. Like I was like, they're going to judge me for what my thoughts are on the industry and this. And what I found out is the more you start to talk to people about your thoughts, you're not always right and I'm not always right. And we can start to kind of cross-share ideas and really benefit from each other.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that networking, communication, getting out there and meeting people is the most important thing for everybody in business. Not just business owners, everybody in business. Because having people that are like-minded, that are passionate, you'll find your group. You'll find people that connect with you. You'll find, and some of my best connections in the industry, I've never worked with. I've never done a project with.
Right.
Like for years, we've just known each other, and you have someone to bounce things by. You're encouraging each other. You ask questions. There's so much value in that. I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, no, I think I really experienced it at your event here in Boise. Michael Warren's a huge mentor of mine.
Yep.
I met him randomly 4 years ago at the first RCN, and found out he's a licensed architect. I was kind of on the journey towards licensure, and he's challenging me every day, like, go test, go get it done. And, just having that community network is huge. And, we've never worked on projects together, but we hassle each other a little bit.
Yeah.
Like he heckles me more than I heckle him.
Yeah.
It's okay. But it's been good. It's been good.
Well, yeah. And the other thing about relationships, right, is like, you never know. You never know what the future holds.
Totally.
You never know where people are going to go. I remember looking back now at people that I met 10 years ago when I was so early on. I had no intention. I didn't know what was going to happen. And now they run companies. And now and you never know when you're going to need somebody to reach out to you. It might be a new role for you. Just build relationships. Don't burn bridges. I'm glad you threw that out and have come to our conference multiple years. So it's always fun having you with us.
Well, I tell the students at school, just because you're in my class for a semester, like, don't be afraid to approach me if you have a question.
Totally.
And I mean that to my network. And I may not know the answer, but I may know somebody that does.
Yep.
Right. And so that's the key for me. Really appreciate you setting this up, and really appreciate being on the show, and been a follower of this for a long time. And your new office is spectacular.
Well, thank you.
Nice job.
I'm glad you could make it in. Thanks for joining us today. This is often my last question, which I'm just going to do as well.
Yeah.
If you could go back, give yourself some advice. You're just, college age. And because I think that'll be some of the same advice you'd give your students now, right?
Yes.
Well, what is some advice you'd give them as they are stepping into where we are in the industry and opportunities today and moving into the future?
The advice that I give them today, and the advice that I would give myself back then, is don't eat the whole elephant. Slowly devour the elephant. It's natural to get very overwhelmed in this space by all the cool and exciting technology, and it's very natural to feel overwhelmed just in general. Slow down. Don't become a tool to the tools. Learn the tools. Leverage the tools. Use those tools to better inform and help your day-to-day. And slowly devour the elephant. That'd probably be the best advice that I would. There's a joke to it, but I'm not going to say the joke to it.
Okay, we'll have to.
I'll tell you offline.
Yeah, exactly. Anybody who's curious will have to remember now to ask for the joke.
Really listening is what I would tell myself.
Yeah.
Like, spend more time listening. In the beginning, I spent more time talking, and I have two of these for a reason.
Yep.
And so I would have spent, going all over again, I would have spent more time listening rather than just doing. Also, be careful with what you say yes to. Always be careful with what you say yes to. It's very easy to say yes to everything. Don't say yes to everything.
Yep.
Evaluate it, listen to it, understand it. Don't always say yes at the beginning. And I'm guilty of that.
Oh, yeah.
So, but if I could tell myself all over again, that's what I would say.
Those are, I really like all of that.
Thank you.
Those are great. It's funny how you eat an elephant, right? And you're saying, slow down, devour it over time. Someone just asked me that on a LinkedIn post. They said, and it was in regard to something else I posted. They said, how do you eat an elephant? And I don't even remember what my post was. But I remember for the first time I thought about that because, the answer is always like, oh, one bite at a time. And I was like, you better build a team of hungry people.
For sure.
Like, because one
sure.
person can't eat an elephant.
Right.
Like, and it's almost like that saying changes nowadays based on technology and based on this idea of collaboration and community, is like, never try to go sit down and eat the whole elephant. It doesn't matter how you try to eat it, you can't eat it. Like,
right. I love the one on LinkedIn that's like a boss versus a leader, and it's a wolf, right? And the wolf, it shows, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's like, it's a short video, and the wolf has a pack with him, and the wolf runs up and just immediately, the boss runs up and just eats the plate before any of his people are fed, basically. And what I love about that analogy is that a true leader is the last to eat, right? Which speaks volumes to me in my day-to-day life. It's like, I want to make sure my kids are fed. I want to make sure my wife is fed, and then I will eat.
Yep.
Right. And I would say that analogy applies very much in the pursuit of learning the industry is become a leader, don't become a boss.
Absolutely. Love it. Well, thank you very much for coming. Love those last words. And I'm sure this will not be the last time that our community hears from you.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good one. Thank you, guys.